Hello, you wonderful people. So last week, the official trailer dropped for the Venom movie, so I want to take this video and kind of discuss some of the stuff that we saw. So first of all, I want to talk about the fact is, if you look at the trailer, it does seem like there are two symbiotes. I mean, maybe they showed it in the teaser trailer, I just definitely noticed it in the full official one. So that could potentially mean that Carnage is in this movie. I mean, it doesn't mean he'll pop up necessarily, but it does probably hint that he is kind of already on his way to existing in that universe. What's interesting too, and maybe it's just me, it didn't look particularly red because I like the cartoons, and probably most likely the comic books too, but the cartoons are what I'm most familiar with. They are very blunt about being like, oh yeah, this is Venom because it's blackish blue, and this is definitely Carnage because it's red, but they both seem black to me. Which there's also the other case that it could be another symbiote entirely, because I'm not familiar with myself, but I have heard people talk about in the past that in the comic books there are more than just Venom and Carnage. Venom and Carnage are just the two that people typically go to, but I think there have been comic book runs where it's like they've tackled other symbiotes as well. I think there's like quite a few. There's like maybe 5 or 6. I'm not that familiar with those. It's something I can't really talk on, but that could be potentially what that could be as well. But what's interesting too is like the whole setup behind him getting the symbiote. It isn't like, because obviously like typically it's like, oh, Spider-Man has it first, which we kind of already knew potentially would be a thing, considering this is kind of its own separate thing and it isn't connected to the MCU where Spider-Man already exists. It seems more like the dude, kind of the main bad guy in this movie, seems to be experimenting on people and kind of infusing them with, I guess, pieces of the symbiote, maybe not the entire thing, because it didn't look like, I mean, from the trailers, it didn't look like Eddie came across the entire like symbiote. Like it looks like one lady attacks him, so maybe something happens later on where it gets on him, but part of me was like, oh, did it seep from her blood or something onto him or something? Like, does he even have the entire symbiote, or is it just a fraction of it? I mean, it is kind of an alien species, so I'm sure it could just multiply on its own. So I'm wondering, is it going to be something where it's like Eddie only has part of it at the beginning and then he goes back and gets the rest of the symbiote, you know, to kind of be whole again, or what? Or maybe it is just the entire thing gets on him, which is also interesting too, because immediately in my head I was like, oh, that's so interesting that they got like the tentacles and stuff coming from his arms and his back. I was like, oh, that's so interesting, it just coming directly from his body like that. Then immediately my brain kind of thought something too. It was like, right, symbiotes can shapeshift, so it could be taking on the form of his clothes. That's typically how Eddie rolls with the symbiote anyway. It takes on the form of like his jacket or whatever. So they also have the ability to camouflage. That's an aspect I always forget too. I don't know if a lot of stuff like acknowledges that aspect. Like, I definitely know like the 90s Spider-Man cartoon definitely did, but I don't know if a lot of, like, I don't know if I've ever seen that recently in anything. But I mean, maybe it's like definitely a comic book thing, maybe it's an older comic book thing, but nevertheless. But I do like the aspect of it kind of balancing itself in the sense of like you hear Venom's voice, because I feel like that's an aspect we've never seen before. Because usually if it's him talking as Venom, it's usually him like obviously he does it in the trailer a little bit. It's like, why did we do that? Like, so I mean, it's probably just, that's probably the beginning stages of it. It's like, okay, you're saying we're a we, and it's like, why did we just do that? So it seems like it might be a situation of the entire movie he's trying to like balance his own sanity, which I think is a very nice aspect to it. It's something I was kind of hoping the movie would have, him kind of driving himself a little crazy where he's hearing a voice that no one else can. But like I said, I feel like that's never been a thing that I've ever really seen pop up in it. I could be 100% wrong, so I think that just seems very unique to this movie, and I think that's kind of neat. Because usually the only time you ever really hear Venom speak is when the symbiote fully comes out and then he starts talking as we. That's typically the only time I ever feel like you ever hear the symbiote talk, but for it to even in his own head manifest as its own personality already and have its own separate voice like that. I don't know, maybe, like I said, maybe stuff is depicted that in the past, but I'm not that aware of it. So what I also appreciate too is it's not like we see him full on Venom through most of this trailer. It's like, no, like most of it he's just kind of using the power, but there is that one little scene at the end where we see him full Venom, which I appreciate too, because I figured that'd be kind of like the best way to trailer that, is just showing with the Venom suit on, just like a little bit like, bam, here's a Venom suit, you know, proof of concept that it's in the movie essentially, to kind of appease anyone. Because I know a lot of people walked away not liking the teaser trailer, which I was kind of fine with that, because it kind of gave you the opportunity to kind of extrapolate some stuff like, oh, what would this be, what would that be, what could this possibly be, what could a movie be set up to be. Doesn't seem like it's necessarily going to be a horror movie. I am curious. I doubt it's going to happen. So, because it's something I brought up when I talked about the teaser trailer, was the whole aspect of Venom eating people. Like I said, it's just a thing I know about because of the Ultimate Spider-Man video game. I would have loved to see that be a thing, but it probably won't be. I also appreciate that this movie is setting him up to be an anti-hero. And he kind of just outright say it, which is neat. Because typically he's always just like a pure villain because he's always driven by revenge, which I guess is kind of his big motivator in this. And not necessarily revenge, but more so taking down some corrupt people who are experimenting on people. So I think it's kind of neat because Brock always kind of starts off as the villain. Actually having him start off as potentially an anti-hero, I think it's pretty neat. Because usually he has to work his way up to being an anti-hero rather than, you know, rather than kind of starting there from the beginning. Because even Eddie's just kind of like, because it seems like this isn't necessarily the same Eddie Brock you would see in the TV shows or comic books, who's kind of beaten down and just kind of down on this. Like, it's like, no, it seems like everything's kind of going good in his life until he gets like the Venom suit. So it's just kind of interesting. It also seems like it isn't necessarily connected to him having cancer, so that's good, because that would suck major ass if you just like I said, Dad just always threw me for a loop. It's like, yeah, you lost your job, you lost your girlfriend, and you find out you have cancer all in a span of a short period of time, and then you get the Venom suit, which kind of helps build him back up. So I think that's interesting. Well, I say all that, but it could be a situation where he actually does lose his job, because we see him kind of going hard on that dude at the beginning, like, oh, experiments kind of kill people. So it could be that guy ends up ruining Eddie's life, gets him fired and stuff like that, and he might potentially get dumped. Maybe the only thing that doesn't pop up is the whole cancer thing. Who knows? Maybe it does actually pop up for all we know, because maybe that's why he took, I mean, it seems like legitimately he isn't like a bad guy. He's actually a good reporter just trying to get to the truth, you know? It's the trailer. A lot of stuff can be misleading because a lot of stuff is out of context, so who knows. I'm very interested to see what direction they do take the movie in. I kind of left my thought earlier, but the whole aspect of it having the Venom suit, I am curious, is it going to be something where we see like midway through the movie? I feel like that's kind of like an in-movie thing where it's like maybe he fully gives into the symbiote for whatever reason. Maybe he's near death and it's promising to keep him alive, and so he fully goes Venom to heal himself or something. Or maybe he just completely gives in, and maybe we see him maybe that could be potentially what it does. He starts off as an anti-hero, but slowly over the course of the movie he gives in and becomes a complete villain by the end. Who knows? I mean, because a lot of the movie he's kind of walking around as himself, as you know, using the symbiote's abilities and stuff like that. So it's not like he's even hiding himself as Venom. You know, like I said, in the grand scheme of things, I am curious to see how this potentially might tie into the MCU. I would think they'd have loose threads connecting them, but I don't know. I'm also bummed, at least from what I saw. I mean, maybe that'll change, but because it wasn't with Peter first, it doesn't have the spider emblem, which a lot of times Venom typically does. Like, even like using the example of the Ultimate Spider-Man game, it's not till like the very end of the game that Venom actually gets the white spider emblem. In all honesty, I'm very excited to like see what this movie's all about. I don't know how most people felt. I mean, you know, it seems like people were pretty positive about it. I think, to be fair, it's like this internet, so you never know, because it could be like a vocal minority that you have no idea about, screaming over here, blah 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 blah, this, that, and you know. But from where I stand, I'm very excited about it because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I'm a huge Venom fan. He is literally my favorite Spider-Man villain because I just think he's so cool, everything he is and what he represents and everything. Like, obviously he's going to represent a different thing in this movie, but I don't care. It's Venom, so it's cool. It's an entire movie dedicated to Venom, which I'm sure I know people have all had their problems with, but like I said, I'm going into this very positive. I typically am about most of these things, so I'm very interested to see what the movie's all about. Obviously, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Did you like the trailer? Did you not? Are you excited? What are some thoughts you have about the trailer yourself? Obviously, like, a lot of people are very good at breaking stuff down, so I'm sure a lot of people who are a lot more well informed than me could probably like inform me as well as other people about like, oh, you missed this, you missed this. It's like, oh, clearly this means this and this is setting, because a lot of the characters they introduced, I'm not sure, like the main antagonist, I don't like, I know him. Like, I'm, you know, once again, I don't know comic books, so he's not a villain that I'm associated with. So, not unless they do something interesting too, because they could potentially just make him like fuse with a symbiote at the end. That could be kind of what that ends up. I mean, maybe it fuses with him, creates Carnage, and then at the end of it, we see Carnage kind of trailing off and finding, God, what's his typical host name? Isn't it Cassidy Clay or something like that? The serial killer? But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, light to the force, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.